In the experiment, children were exposed to aggressive and non-aggressive adult models, and then they were tested for the amount of imitative learning in the new situation in the absence of the model.
Gagey! Oh, bless. What are you doing with your pants down? Why? Well, why are you getting so mad? All right, we're gonna come pull them up. How'd your pants fall down? Why are you getting... Wait a second. What's that all for? Huh? Why are you throwing a rock at me, though? What did I do?
You want to keep netting? Okay. Come on. Then come back up to the camper.
Okay, come on. Come on, have a seat then. If you're not going to... Wouldn't think about that.
I would not throw anything at Daddy if I were you.
Why do you hate me? What did I do?
Hey, watch your mouth. Watch your mouth. That is not nice talk.
Identification in terms of incidental learning demonstrates that children readily imitate behavior exhibited by an adult model in the presence of that model. While this boy did not likely see his father pantsless throwing rocks into the river, he did likely see some sort of aggressive behavior. Children perceive their parents as having distinct preferences regarding sex-appropriate modes of behavior. As a result of differing reinforcement histories, tendencies to imitate male and female models thus acquire differential habit strength. Rainbows and lollipops. Rainbows and lollipops. Subjects exposed to aggressive models would reproduce aggressive acts resembling those of their models, and would differ in this respect from subjects who observed non-aggressive models and from those who had no prior exposure to any models. Subjects will imitate behavior of same-sex models to a greater degree than the opposite.
In the experiment, there was a lot of room for error, so setup had to be broken down precisely. To set up the study, 72 subjects from a Stanford University nursing school ranging from ages of 37 to 69 months with a mean age of 52 were selected. 36 were boys and 36 were girls. Helping in the experiment were 3 adults, 1 male model, 1 female model, and 1 female experimenter. Subjects were divided into 8 experimental groups of 6 and 1 control group of 24. All were equally divided into number of girls and boys. Each experimental group was then split into either a non-aggressive group or an aggressive group, so that there was now 12 boys in an aggressive group and 12 boys in a non-aggressive group, and the same for the girls. To increase precision of the treatment comparisons for aggressive and non-aggressive groups, subjects were rated on 4 5-point rating scales by the experimenter and nursery teacher that measured physical and verbal aggression to see what group each subject belonged in. Half of each aggressive group and half of each non-aggressive group would observe same-sex models, and the other half would observe opposite-sex models in the first step of the test. Here's a picture to better see how the experiment was set up. To start the testing, each subject was individually brought to a room by the experimenter and shown some basic toys seen in a nursery, like animals, flowers, figurines, pictures, and stickers. The adult model, either male or female, was then brought to an opposite corner where they had Tinker toys, a mallet, and a 5-foot Bobo doll. And not Bobo the clown, Bobo the doll. If the child was in the non-aggressive group, the model ignored Bobo and built Tinker toys. If the child was in an aggressive group, a minute into playing, the model would stand up and spend the rest of the 10 minutes showing aggression towards it. The model would do tasks that hopefully the child would observe and later imitate. So instead of only punching a doll, which the children might do without observing, the model laid Bo on his side and punched him in the nose, hit him with the mallet, tossed him in the air, and kicked him around the room. They repeat this 3 times, as well as aggressive verbal responses such as throw him in the air, kick him, and pow. And then 2 non-aggressive verbal responses such as he keeps coming back for more, and he sure is a tough fella. Next, subjects from the experimental control groups were brought to a completely different room with basic toys such as cars, airplanes, spinning tops, and dolls. It is important to note that the control group has not participated until now. About 2 minutes into play, the experimenter would tell the subjects that these were her very best toys and wouldn't let just anyone play with them. She then took them to a completely different room where they would be able to play with the toys. This was done for 2 reasons. 1. Observing aggression tends to reduce aggression in the observer, so the aggressive group would be at the same level as the others. 2. If the subjects in the non-aggressive condition express little aggression in the face of appropriate instigation, the presence of an inhibitory process would be indicated. In this next room, the experimenter had to be in the room because children refused to be alone, but she sat at a desk by herself to avoid interaction. The room was full of toys that could be used to imitate aggression, such as dart guns, a mallet, tetherball, and a 3-foot Bobo doll. Non-aggressive toys included crayons, dolls, cars, and stuffed animals. Toys were placed in a fixed order to eliminate variation in behavior all throughout the room. Each subject was given 20 minutes in this room. Judges behind a one-way mirror recorded responses of children every 5 seconds to get a total of 240 responses. The male model scored every child that he did not serve as a model so as not to have any knowledge of the subject's group assignments. A second observer scored the other half. The judges used 3 measures of imitation against Bobo. 1. Imitation of physical aggression. This was acts of striking Bobo with a mallet, sitting on the doll and punching it in the nose, and kicking and tossing it in the air. 2. Imitative verbal aggression. This was repeated phrases such as sock him, hit him, kick him, throw him in the air, and pow. 3rd, imitative non-aggressive verbal responses such as repeated phrases like he keeps coming back for more and he sure is a tough fella. The judges also found components that they did not first look for. First was 2 aggressive imitation components. The first was malaggression, which was striking objects other than Bobo, and the second was sitting on Bobo but not showing aggression towards him. The second 2 were non-imitative aggressive components. The first was punching Bobo the doll, which models did not do, and then non-imitative physical and verbal aggression, which were things like excessive gunplay and yelling things like shoot Bobo, cut him, and throw him in the air. Here is a short video of the subjects with Bobo.
It was once widely believed that seeing others vent aggression would drain the viewer's aggressive drive. As you can see, exposure to aggressive modeling is hardly cathartic. Exposure to aggressive modeling increased attraction to guns, even though it was never modeled. Guns had less appeal to children who had no exposure to the aggressive modeling. The children also picked up the novel hostile language. The room contained varied play materials, and children could choose to play aggressively or non-aggressively. The children devised new ways of hitting the doll. Now, the object of interest was the novel aggressive acts, not punching the doll.
The subjects that were in the aggressive condition group showed a lot of resemblance to the models by being both physically and verbally aggressive. Their mean scores were very different from the mean scores of subjects in the non-aggressive and control groups. About 70% of the subjects in the non-aggressive and control groups had scores of 0. The Friedman two-way analysis of variance by ranks was used to test the significance of the differences in scores. The experiment shows that the subjects exposed to the aggressive model have a greater chance of performing aggressive behavior. The comparison of pairs of treatment scores among the groups shows that the aggressive behavior of subjects exposed to the aggressive models was the main cause for the overall differences. Their scores are much higher than the scores of the non-aggressive and control groups. Along with physical aggression, verbal responses of aggression were shown in about 1/3 of the subjects exposed to the aggressive model. None of the subjects in the non-aggressive or control groups showed any verbal aggression. The Cochrane Q test shows that this difference is significantly beyond the .001 level. The variance of scores of the subject's aggressive use of the mallet toward objects other than the Bobo doll shows that treatment conditions are a very important statistical source of variation. Individual sign tests show that more mallet aggression was portrayed in female subjects in the aggressive and control conditions in comparison to the non-aggressive condition. Female subjects performed a mean number of 18.0 mallet aggression responses for the aggressive condition, 13.1 for the control condition, and only 0.5 for the non-aggressive condition. The difference in mean values of mallet aggression among the aggressive and control conditions were not statistically significant. The partially imitative response of sitting on the Bobo doll shows in the comparison of pairs of scores by the sign test procedure that this behavior was performed in the aggressive condition to a much greater extent than the non-aggressive and control conditions. Subjects engaged in aggressive gunplay or punched the Bobo doll to a greater extent than any of the aggressive models had. The main source of the overall difference in the comparison of treatment pairs was the aggressive and non-aggressive groups, which show a very significant difference. The hypothesis that boys are more prone than girls to imitate aggression exhibited by a model was partially confirmed in the study. T-tests showed that boys imitated more physical aggression than girls, but the groups did not differ in the imitation of verbal aggression. When exposed to a male model, male subjects showed more physical and verbal imitative aggression, more non-imitative aggression, and aggressive gunplay. When exposed to a female model, girls showed more imitative verbal aggression and more non-imitative aggression than the boys did. The mean differences between the two groups was not statistically significant. The behaviors of the subjects in the non-aggressive and control conditions were influenced more by the male model than the female model. The only significant difference between the non-aggressive and control groups was that the control group showed more mallet aggression. The data shows that the reason there are no significant differences between the two groups is because the subjects that were exposed to the female model in the non-aggressive condition did not differ from the control groups of any of the aggression measures. In comparison to the control group, the mean scores of subjects exposed to the non-aggressive male model showed less imitative physical, verbal, and mallet aggression, less non-imitative physical and verbal aggression, and they were less.
First, we'll look at some implications. Even in 1961, we were able to conclude that children are easily susceptible, especially in the face of authority figures. In this situation, they were adults. They're vulnerable human beings, and their outlook and perceptions on life are easily influenced by the actions and rationales of others. Next, statistically, even at a young age, males tend to be more physically aggressive than females. However, don't ever doubt the power of a female's smart mouth, because our famous silver tongues begin early. Just think of Honey Boo Boo and how she could become the next Gossip Girl. Finally, we should look at how aggressive simulation may be bad, but it could be better than no simulation at all. Part of the article talks about how, even more noteworthy in the finding, is that the subjects who observed non-aggressive models spent more than twice as much time as the subjects in aggressive conditions simply sitting quietly without handling any of the play toys. So that basically is saying that without the violent stimulation, they're more likely to sit around and do nothing at all. So we have to look at the pros and cons of each side. Next, we'll look at the strengths and limitations of this research. First of all, we'll look at the strengths, which is the fact that there are no real ways of analyzing what the long-term effects of this are. Will these children now all have violent tendencies after the study? Next, the process as a whole seems sort of confusing, in addition to the fact that having the two judges of the experiment being people who were very familiar with the kids sounds like it was a little bit too subjective. I guess there are pros and cons to both sides of this argument. Having evaluated behavior quantified is also borderline quantitative. Basically, what we can see as this study is that though it's technically considered quantitative because it's on a 1 to 5 scale, it's qualitative behavior. It's just a wolf in sheep's clothing. Finally, we have to look at the strengths. This is a breakthrough experiment. It highlighted how important it is to focus on how our children perceive violence and opened the doors for a lot of studies that have happened even today. Finally, we will look at the future directions and applications of this process. I personally believe that it would be very interesting to see how the aggression due to interactions translates into normal classroom activities and how the children will interact with their peers, not just with the toy objects they're given. Also, I have to beg the question, is it gender-specific rage that's happening due to this aggression? The creepy Bobo doll definitely looks like a male, so does this aggression continue on throughout the genders, or just to the Bobo doll? Also, there's always the age-old question of why are we scared of clowns? Answer, the Bobo doll looks scarily like a clown. Bet that answers a lot of questions. Quantitative experimentation is very good to have. Statistical data gives us hard, true evidence of exactly what's going on. And because this study obviously shows us a lot about our children's perceptions, quantitative research in this sense has been incredibly beneficial.